Game week 24 is here, so it's time to lock in those FPL teams. Welcome to FPL Mate, my name is Dan, and ahead of the big double game week with Liverpool and Everton, it's time to make my moves for Game week 24. Okay guys, so I should start out by saying game week 23 for me was a disaster, and honestly, yes, I had a pretty small, I guess, red arrow down around 30,000 places, but I feel like I deserved maybe a bit worse because it was a bit of a disaster. Honestly, my move last week was to transfer Raya out for Alisson, and obviously Alisson scored just 2 points, conceding in the 90th minute against Ipswich, and Raya with a big 9-pointer despite being down to 10 men. So I don't know, I didn't expect Saliba to be playing for Arsenal. I was very tight on budget, so I needed to go early on that transfer if I wanted to make it. Jumped the gun a little bit. Fabianski benched. It has ruined plans going forward a little bit, and I'm down 7 points, which would have put me on a green arrow. Obviously, I'm also locked out of someone like Gakpo. If I weren't to make 2 transfers, I'd have to sell Alisson and then maybe sell someone else to get Gakpo using my 2 free transfers. So I'm in a bit of a predicament, but look, it was a bad, I don't know if it was a bad decision, but it was certainly a bad outcome. I maybe should have been more patient with this one, but all we can do now is try and, I don't know, react to this one. So I'll hopefully, anyone who's in a similar situation to me, hopefully we can help you guys moving forward, and I'm going to go through some of my thoughts on how we can make the best of a bad scenario, because I think that is what, I think that's what makes a good FPL manager, making the best out of bad situations. So let's see what we can do. Points benched again in game week 23, which shows at least my squad is strong, but hoping for a few more points in game week 24, I can't lie. If you haven't liked the video yet, please do so. If you have been enjoying the content, yellow card for those who haven't liked the video, massively appreciated, and you want to avoid one of those. So subscribe, like, all that good stuff. Thank you very much. Let's move on with the video. Now, Game Week 24 is going to be an interesting one, and particularly because so many people will be using the triple captain and assistant manager chips, there is going to be a few red arrows for those going without a chip. And I'm not using a chip this week. That is not the plan, and I have to kind of accept that this is not going to be the greatest of weeks for me, but hopefully we can make some decisions that benefits us going forward so we can play catch up after this game week, and hopefully use a strategy that is better. So not only will we catch up, but overtake those using chips in Game Week 24. Of course, that is just my strategy, and hopefully it can pay off. But we've got 2 free transfers, which is very, very good going into a double game week, and we can start thinking about some things. So right now we have got Alisson in goal, and we are going to talk about the potential of moving him to a Gakpo. Obviously not directly because they play in different positions, but I think it is a worthwhile discussion for today. But it does have to be said that Alisson is playing for a Liverpool team who is still doing very, very good defensively, actually had lower XG conceded than Arsenal in game week 23. And I think if Alisson did keep a clean sheet in that game, we might be having a slightly different conversation here. So it is those small differences that can make a big difference to our opinions. We are doubled up on the Liverpool defense with Trent, and if I'm totally honest, generally speaking, I think this is a good thing. I do think this is a good thing. That's not to say it is the best thing, because I think we all agree at this point that we would rather have a Gakpo in our team than an Alisson. Of course, Trent is always going to be in there. But if we look through the double game week, not only do we see that Liverpool have very, very good projected goals, 4.3 projected goals during the double game week, which is very, very high, but also a 58% chance of 1 or more clean sheet according to the market odds provided by Rob T. So actually, generally speaking, yes, it's great to have Liverpool attackers, but it's also great to have Liverpool defenders. And if we could have 4 or 5 Liverpool players in our teams, then, you know, we probably would be strongly considering Alisson as a goalkeeper. So just wanted to put that one out there. There is such thing as a good situation without being in the best situation, and I guess it comes down to opportunity cost, which is where big decisions do need to be made. But in general, I think double Liverpool defense is still good. Don't think that it is suddenly terrible. It is not the best situation, but it is still a good situation, and there's every chance that Liverpool do keep 2 clean sheets in this game week. I think it's probably unlikely, but there is a good chance, you know, with a player like Alisson against a team like Bournemouth, for example, in this double game week, there are going to be save points to be had. And of course, Trent there is no doubt he is a no-brainer pick for double game week 24 and beyond because of his amazing attacking threat. He's now leading the tables in terms of those attacking numbers for defenders with plenty of creativity and goal threat as well. So I think Trent is certainly a player who I'm very happy with. We also have Gabriel in this team. Arsenal finally keeping a clean sheet last game week, a very rare clean sheet, but the data clearly doesn't lie, and I think certainly what we see is after some time, regression to mean a good defence will keep clean sheets. And against Man City, that's less likely to happen, but still, we see the way Arsenal usually set up. And they are a team that is going to go into this game with an incredibly negative setup. We've seen them do it time and time again against Man City, and they're doing it more against any team now. So you can certainly foresee a universe in which Arsenal do keep a clean sheet in this game. And of course, you add Gabriel's attacking threat to that. And my third and final defender before transfers is going to be Lewis Hall. Now, I'm not 100% convinced by Lewis Hall at this moment because the fixtures coming up for him are not great. Fulham is okay, but after that we have Man City, Forest again okay, and then Liverpool away from home. And in addition to that, there is a very high chance of Newcastle having a blank game week and therefore no fixture in game week 29. So we will find that out before the game week 25 deadline. So I don't think there's any need to rush those Newcastle players out this week necessarily, but it's certainly something that can be considered if you want to bet that Newcastle will blank in 29. They will maintain their 2-0 lead over Arsenal in the League Cup semi-final. And also, maybe you can find someone better who has better fixtures in this short-term period and a fixture in 29. So I definitely get it. And if it wasn't for me purchasing Lewis Hall all the way back when he was 4.3 million, I'd be more kind of willing to sell him because I do have a lot of money tied up in him. Let's move on into the midfield regardless, but we have got Salah here. Again, double game week, great opportunity. It should be noted that Salah's form has dipped off a little bit. And given the fixtures, I don't think these are two amazing fixtures for any kind of attacker, really. So if we bring back up the stats, the numbers for the best defences in the Premier League, what we do see is Bournemouth are up here and Everton are up here for non-penalty expected goals against. And that's particularly interesting when you consider that, particularly Everton, they've played really tough fixtures recently. And despite that, are keeping the chances conceded fairly low. And given it's both away fixtures as well, I think in a way, as someone who has already used my triple captain, I feel a little bit lucky that the big popular triple captain week has fallen in a week where, unfortunately, Salah has pretty mediocre fixtures. These aren't great fixtures for an attacker, and he's not in the hottest vein of form of the season either. That said, he's clearly still the best pick for this week. He's still clearly the best captain. And if you do have a triple captain, if I had it, I would certainly be using it this week. But I think anyone who doesn't have a triple captain chip right now should basically be hoping that Salah blanks, even if you are captaining him, because triple captainers will be scoring points against you with him. Cole Palmer up next, and as I always say, Palmer sometimes struggles in some of the bigger fixtures, and he did so again against Manchester City. In fact, one moment from Palmer that stands out for me as someone who has Jackson, albeit on my bench last week, is Palmer had, he had a square ball to pass to Jackson, which would have created an open goal, bringing the scoreline to 2-0 to Chelsea. And that would have been a haul for Jackson if Palmer hadn't kind of maybe put too much weight on the pass. So I think Palmer, once again, we see this a lot, that he kind of, I don't want to say disappears, but his performances in the big matches are not so great, and he's got a few of those difficult games out the way now. So I'm hoping that we've got West Ham, we've got Brighton, Aston Villa, Southampton, even Leicester after that in game week 28. Really nice fixtures for Palmer, who is still a top player in putting up some of the best numbers in the Premier League still to this point, and we'll throw some of those numbers on screen right now, guys. He has dipped off a little bit, but he is still one of the top players here in terms of those players who play every single game for their clubs. Palmer is coming in 4th for the best numbers for midfielders behind Salah, Foden and Mbeumo. So still very high numbers despite some difficult performances. I think what we will see is the same thing we see all the time with Palmer. When we get to those easier fixtures, he will be that flat track bully that we know and love. And if it wasn't for the double game week for Salah, I think a few of people would actually be considering captaining Palmer for this game week against West Ham. But let's move on to Gordon here against Fulham. We spoke about Newcastle, their poor fixtures and the potential blank game week and how that might impact our feelings on Gordon. But another feeling I have with Gordon is, yes, he is pretty consistent with the points, but his haul potential doesn't seem to be there. Struggles to get bonus points, struggles to get that second attacking return in a game. And I don't think that's going to get easier in these fixtures ahead of him. In fact, I think these fixtures from an attacker's point of view are actually slightly more difficult than they are perhaps from a defender's point of view. So I think Gordon is definitely a player that can potentially be sacrificed in the near future. I think a lot of people will sell him next game week when or if a blank game week 29 is confirmed. So we have a decision. Do you keep him against Fulham? I think you definitely could. But if you do have a couple of free transfers like I do, it's definitely a player who I quite like the look of to bring in. If we have a look through the numbers again for midfielders, we see Gordon is slowly dropping down this list for top midfielders. So is it time to jump on a player who is performing slightly better, such as a Bryan Mbeumo, penalty taker extraordinaire, far better fixtures? Let's circle back to that one because I think there is a bit of a gap opening up between two players who are a very similar price and therefore are a fairly simple opportunity to make a transfer. And Morgan Rogers, the final player on in my midfield. Certainly stats are not going to tell us too much about him, but what I can tell you is that he scored a hat-trick against Celtic in the Champions League just a couple of days ago. In fact, as you watch this video, it would have been yesterday, I think. Is that right? Yeah, Wednesday. So yeah, Rogers, it's crazy. His Champions League form is really good. In the Premier League, we've seen him put up some phenomenal performances, getting goals, getting assists. However, last game week, well, he disappointed against West Ham, but he did have a goal disallowed in that game. So I think people who just look at maybe FPL points will maybe feel a little down on Rodgers at the moment. But when you look at the disallowed goal, if you watch the game, if you look at the Champions League performances where he is continuously getting attacking returns, you know, form counts for all competitions. It's not like a player, you know, drops in and out of form depending on the competition they're playing in. And against Wolves, who are really struggling right now, I definitely have a decent amount of faith in Morgan Rogers, and I'm quite happy to own him as a player who is becoming a little bit of a differential. So I like Rodgers for this week, more so than I did last week. Hopefully he can take that hat-trick and, you know, really progress from that and make his mark more so on the Premier League. We know he's done it already this season. Let's get it a bit more consistent. That's what I'd like to see. But the next two fixtures, maybe even three fixtures, if you include Chelsea, are really nice for Aston Villa. So I think it's nice to have an attacking asset from that team. But let's move up front anyway. Isak is going nowhere. Form over fixture. And I think there is few, if any, players in the Premier League in better form than Isak. He's been so consistent, so phenomenal, and I trust him, certainly against Fulham, but even against some of these tougher oppositions. I think he's going to cause some troubles for the defences of City, Forest and Liverpool in upcoming game weeks. Nicholas Jackson is also in here as a starter. Will I regret this decision? Maybe. But West Ham is a nice fixture, as we know, and I think Jackson was a little unlucky not to get more points. And you know, what we see it time and time again, Chelsea need Jackson on the pitch because he's so important to their off-the-ball play. Jackson off the ball is an incredible football player, but because he is lacking in confidence, his decision-making isn't the best at the moment. And I think it's only going to take a goal, and that will change. But I've been saying that every week. The positive thing is that from next week, I'm pretty much going to have the option to bench Jackson whenever I need to, or potentially sell him as well. So, yeah, he is in my squad at the moment. Bit of a cash cow if I need to make a move. If a striker stands out, like Cody Gakpo or someone else that I really want to move to, then Jackson will be the sacrificial lamb, I suppose, for those kind of moves. And Chris Wood, hoping he can get back into form after his blank last week, which wasn't entirely surprising, to be honest, against a very much in-form Bournemouth team. So let's see what Chris Wood can do against Brighton. But again, a player who isn't favoured by underlying numbers, but always seems to perform regardless. So yeah, back to form for him, I hope. But another player I think I'd be willing to sell, if not for his guaranteed fixture against Ipswich in Game Week 29, which I have a feeling could be quite useful when we get to that stage in the season. So let's go to the bench quickly. Fabianski out of the starting 11. Can he get back into the starting 11 by Game Week 29? I really hope so, but we will see. Benching Sarr, his stats, his looking at the eye test, watching him play, not enough of the play is going down his side of the pitch for Crystal Palace, and as such he's fallen massively out of form. The hot streak is way behind us now, and I'm more than comfortable with benching him and potentially selling him as well. We've got Kirkes on the bench here, very happy to own him, but not keen on playing him against Liverpool. After that, he is going to be a mainstay in my starting 11, and a player I'm very glad to have ready to go, pre-made for Game Week 25 onwards, where he faces Southampton, Wolves and Brighton, which I think are all great fixtures for a defender, particularly for Bournemouth. And Castagna away against Newcastle, not really looking to play him this game week, but could come into my starting 11 in future game weeks, potentially, at some point or another. We'll have to wait and see. So, 2 free transfers. Let's talk about transfers, guys, and I think I have a few options here. One option is to buy Cody Gakpo, and the way I would do that is I would use my 2 free transfers to sell Alisson to Pickford, and I would sell Jackson to Gakpo, and I think that would improve my team, but I would be 2 free transfers down, which could otherwise be used in a really useful way to set up for Game Week 29 and manage to navigate Game Week 29 without the use of a free hit, which has always been the plan, to try and navigate 29 without a free hit. So that's what I really hope to do with my team, and I will go through my team week by week in later on in the video, don't you worry, so you can see a better outline of my strategy, I suppose. But as of right now, I think there are a couple of other things I'd quite like to do. Now, we mentioned last game week, and I mentioned it again this week, that I really like the look of Bryan Mbeumo. He's got great fixtures coming up in these coming game weeks, so let's just go through them. First of all, Tottenham Hotspur. I mean, that is one of the best fixtures in the game right now, followed by West Ham, Leicester, Everton and Aston Villa, both at home. And of course, he has the guaranteed fixture away against Bournemouth in Game Week 29 as well. So I think this is a really nice run for Mbeumo in general, and I think he is definitely going to cause some damage. I think moving Gordon to Mbeumo and kind of, I guess, betting on, Newcastle reaching the League Cup final and blanking in Game Week 29 could be beneficial for me. So that is an individual move I'd really like to make. I'm also very tight on budget for this. So if I was to move Gordon to Mbeumo, I would have nothing in the bank. And what I want to do next game week is actually move Sarr to a Bournemouth midfielder, preferably Kluivert, who is also 5.7 million. So I could use my 2 free transfers to set up for future game weeks here and improve my starting 11 just that little bit by moving Gordon to Mbeumo and Ismaila Sarr over to Justin Kluivert. I think that could be very nice. Another option, however, is to do Gordon to Mbeumo and Hall to Mykolenko, which would free up a little bit of budget, but selling both of my Newcastle, well, non-Isak Newcastle players, I think would be very problematic if Newcastle ended up not blanking in Game Week 29. Because actually, if Newcastle have a fixture in Game Week 29, I'd quite like to have Gordon, I'd quite like to have Hall. So I think that could be a little problematic for sure. So where do we go from there? I think the one move that I am most keen on is the Mbeumo move, and a big part of that is the use of 2 transfers and using them to play a long-term game. Yes, I would like Gakpo, but I think for anyone who is currently doubled up on the Liverpool defence, I would just kind of play a game where you hope Gakpo doesn't do well. And I want to be very clear here. If I was to pick 3 Liverpool players right now, I would pick Salah, Trent and Gakpo. But using 2 free transfers to move a Alisson, who is a perfectly fine FPL asset, to a Gakpo, that is something I am not as keen on. So I think those 2 free transfers are very, very valuable. And I think particularly with Game Week 29 coming up, I think people who plan to navigate Game Week 29 without the use of a free hit, it's going to be more beneficial to keep those free transfers or use them in a way that benefits you going forward. So I think that would be my advice to most people. If you are free hitting in Game Week 29 and you do have some free transfers to use, I'll be more willing to make the switch of moving Alisson to Gakpo, if you like. But I think, honestly, we can run agendas here, and there are certainly some agendas you could run that maybe imply that Alisson could even outscore Gakpo. I think it's unlikely. But I just want to put this one out here. Just for the sake of the video and just to make the case for keeping double Liverpool defence. I'm not saying buy double Liverpool defence, but at least keeping them. And that's Gakpo playing away from home. Now, we know that Liverpool, when Gakpo faced 2 reasonably difficult fixtures in Game Week 24 against Bournemouth and Everton. Neither of these games are probably going to be goal fests. It's definitely a possibility with the quality Liverpool have. But let me just go through Gakpo home versus away. So what we've seen is his home and away stats are very, very different. At home, he takes slightly more shots, but shots in far more dangerous areas, scores more goals. We scored 7 goals in home fixtures this season and 2 assists. Less creativity with 10 key passes, but far more shooting from dangerous areas. And if you look at his numbers away from home, we actually see a fairly different story here. So he's only scored 1 goal away from home this entire season in 11 matches and 1 assist as well, although his creative numbers are up when he is away from home. And I think this is a difference between how teams set up against Liverpool when they're playing at home versus away. If you're playing at home, you probably go at Liverpool maybe a little bit more, or, if you're away, you maybe sit back a little bit more against someone like Gakpo, and it's going to depend on the fixture as well. And Gakpo, I think, is naturally getting more opportunities when he's playing at home, because the away team is perhaps sitting back a little bit more against Liverpool, and Gakpo can, I guess, goal hang a little bit, getting those central areas. He's got that huge physical presence and score goals that way, which is really, really useful. However, away from home, when Liverpool are playing away from home, Liverpool can play a far more counter-attacking style of football, which is how Salah has been so good away from home, because more space is opened up for him to play. Luis Diaz, another player who benefits from playing away from home at Liverpool. So there is this trend emerging where Gakpo is performing better at home versus away fixtures, and maybe Salah and Luis Diaz are slightly favour playing away from home against teams. Now, let's see what happens, because Bournemouth aren't really a team who really naturally will sit back, and perhaps Everton are. So we could see a different situation based on those fixtures, and I imagine that Gakpo will do better against Everton than he does against Bournemouth, but I don't think that's too controversial to say. And the final point on Gakpo is that what did he play, 55 minutes in the midweek Champions League game, maybe damages his minutes potential a little bit, but he still should start both games, in my opinion. But I just wanted to put that one out there. Gakpo is a brilliant FPL asset, but I don't think he is, like the saviour of everything. Salah is still a superior asset. I still think Trent is a better FPL asset for the double game week, and Gakpo would come in third for me. Still brilliant. Maybe this is cope. I'm certainly showing you a few agendas there. But I do want to be very transparent when I say Gakpo is the better pick than Alisson, or Konate, or Van Dijk, and Luis Diaz, most likely. Luis Diaz, the fixtures maybe suit him a little bit more. But if you already have these players in your team, I don't think it's worth using 2 free transfers to correct it, if you like. So I hope that really helps anyone who is in a similar situation to me. And just run an agenda, man. That's how we cope with FPL. You can't have everyone, so you run negative agendas on the players you don't have and positive agendas on the players you do have. We've heard so much positive stuff about Gakpo. I've spoken very high praise on him over the past, this week's videos, certainly. But I just wanted to kind of put things into perspective and maybe try and look at things from the other side for today. So with that all said, I'm going to make the transfer move of Gordon to Mbeumo. So this is the move I really like, and I'm pretty likely to use my second free transfer as well. And what I need to do is make a decision. Do I sell Hall to Mykolenko and bet on Newcastle blanking in 29, or do I move Sarr to Kluivert, which is a really, really nice move, setting myself up from game week 25 onwards? And I think I will have to go early on that move because Sarr may drop in price before the deadline, Kluivert may go up in price before the deadline, and I'm not going to be able to afford that move if I wait too long for it. So that might have to be done as well. But for now, we're Gordon to Mbeumo. And I'm leaning towards keeping Hall and leaving my options a little bit open for Game Week 29 and trying to play a bit of a strategic game. But let me show you what my plan is for, the future game weeks and game week 29 included in that. So current plan, current strategy of how we're going to navigate that. But before we do that, let's put the very obvious captain's armband on Mo Salah, and we're going to put the vice captain on Trent Alexander-Arnold here. Let's move on and have a look at the strategy moving forward. So we are once again on the Fantasy Football Hub website. Of course, guys, if you haven't checked it out already, please do make sure you go and do so. You can get a free trial right now using the link in the description. Perfect for planning out your FPL team. And of course, all of the Opta stats we show today are also from the Hub website. But I've set out my team here, assuming I do the Mykolenko move for game week 24, just to show you what my team would look like here. And I think it looks pretty good. And if I did the Mykolenko move and just went early on, selling Hall and presumed he is going to blank, that would free up a little bit of budget for me in the bank as well. So when we get to game week 25, I would be able to actually afford to make the Sarr to Kluivert move regardless of any price changes there. So that could be pretty useful. And that would actually give me double Bournemouth against Southampton, which I think is a privileged position that not too many people will be in. I can start to bench Jackson if I want to, or consider other moves, what kind of forwards I like the look of. Maybe we have a look at Wissa, for example. Maybe we have a look at, probably not Mateta, but we'll have a look at who's blanking. I'm certainly looking at the likes of Cunha, who in game week 29 plays against Southampton. So that could be a pretty nice move if I'm looking to, I guess, target someone ready for game week 29. But I'd have to probably wait until game week 29 to make that move. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself here. So between game week, I guess, 26 and 29, I would have a few more free transfers to actually complete my team changes to try and create something pretty good for game week 29 without the use of any chips. And then I would have a decision to wildcard in game week 30 or to hold off on the wildcard if I thought my squad would be good enough. I could maybe even wildcard in game week 31 potentially and get that one extra week of information. But if I did get to game week 29, I could make several transfers here. I could sell the likes of Salah, lose a bit of team value, but my team value is super high anyway, so I'm not too worried about that. We could have a look at Sells as a goalkeeper. We could have a look at bringing in Bruno Fernandes for his fixture against Leicester. We mentioned Cunha already. So my team would end up looking something a little bit like this for game week 29 if I were to use those transfers alone. So no hits taken to get to here, and depending on other things, I could even, potentially do this without having to with transfers in the bank, so I'd actually have spare transfers as well. That is definitely also a possibility. So I think going into a game week 29 with a team like this without the use of a free hit will be very, very nice indeed. And then from game week 30, it's going to depend on who ends up doubling in game week 33 and game week 36. So my idea is we try and gather more information over the next few game weeks. And what we'll find out is who is going to the League Cup final and therefore who will likely to double in 33. And then we'll also find out who is progressing in the FA Cup and therefore who will be doubling in game week 36. And we'll have that information by the game week 30 deadline. So therefore in game week 30, we can have a look at how everything has been laid out, and we will see, is there a lot of teams who double in in game week 33 who also double in 36. So for example, do Liverpool have 2 doubles? Do Newcastle have 2 doubles? Do I don't know, Chelsea could potentially have 2 doubles as well. So there's various teams who could have 2 double game weeks between now and the end of the season. And if so, wildcarding in game week 30 could be very, very nice indeed, because it allows you to bring in a whole bunch of players ready for both of those double game weeks. And what I would do, of course, would be free hit in game week 35, which will be a big blank game week before game week 36, where we will see a double. So that, to me, is the perfect plan, but we still need a little bit more information before we can say, this is what we're doing. We need a little bit more information. We need to know, are the same teams going to be doubling in 33 and 36, or is it going to be a whole different set of teams? If it's a whole different set of teams, then maybe I'll actually want to wildcard a little bit later. So I get one set of players for the Game Week 33 double and a whole different set of players for the Game Week 36 double. So that's the plan for me right now. Is it Game Week 35? Actually, I probably should have checked here. Is it Game Week 35, which is the blank game week? No, it's game week 34. Sorry. So it would be, hopefully, we will navigate game week 29 with our transfers alone. Maybe wildcard in 30 if there is a lot of players doubling in 33 and 36. And if there is a bit of a difference between the teams doubling in 33 compared to 36, we will look to wildcard in game week 35 instead. And the free hit would go on game week 34 with the biggest blank game week of the season. So I can very easily navigate that without losing any team value later on in the season, without having to sacrifice players. So I think that is the general plan for me right now. And I think both of them work. And at this point, it just depends on results. So waiting for that, guys, right now. That is my chip strategy, and hopefully it all makes sense to you guys. But I think I'm in a good position to execute this, to be honest. Just waiting for those League Cup results so we can nail down that game week 29. So yeah, we're going to be doing some chip strategy videos for next game week, because we'll have so much more information. So very much looking forward to sharing that with you and really starting to define those chip strategies. But there we go, guys. I have waffled on enough. But if you did enjoy this video, make sure you do drop a like, do subscribe if you're new around here, check out another video if you would like to, and of course, leave a comment if you want as well. But I'll see you on the next video for, well, team news, and I'll see you later, mates. Bye-bye.